Zara had learned to expect nothing from the universe. She lay on the cold metal floor of the medical bay, her violet eyes staring at the ceiling panels that hummed with alien technology. Her legs, once strong enough to carry her through the crystal forests of her home world, now felt like dead weight beneath the thin medical blanket. The Calyx medical officers moved around her with clinical detachment. Their long, spider-like limbs clicked against the floor as they discussed her case in their clicking language. Zara understood every word, though she wished she didn't. "The spinal damage is too severe," Dr. Vexhall clicked to his assistant. "Our neural regeneration technology cannot repair tissue this damaged. The human weapon did too much harm." Zara closed her eyes, remembering the day the human soldiers had attacked their research station. She had been working in the communications center when the explosions started. A falling beam had crushed her spine, leaving her unable to move anything below her waist. That had been 6 months ago. "What do we do with her?" the assistant asked. "The rehabilitation programs require subjects who can eventually return to productive work." "Transfer her to the disposal facility," Dr. Vexhall said without emotion. "Resources are limited. We cannot waste them on damaged goods." Zara's heart sank, but she showed no emotion on her face. She had learned that showing pain only made the Calyx more eager to dispose of her. Her own people, who claimed to value all life, had written her off the moment they saw her test results. 3 days later, she found herself on a transport ship heading toward the edge of Calyx space. The other passengers were all rejects like her, beings deemed too damaged, too old, or too expensive to maintain. They were being taken to a neutral zone where other species sometimes took unwanted individuals as laborers or servants. The transport captain, a bitter old Calyx named Morden, made no secret of his disgust with his cargo. "Worthless mouths to feed," he muttered as he checked the manifest. "At least the humans sometimes take the worst cases. They're stupid enough to waste resources on lost causes." When they arrived at Station Omega-7, a massive trading post on the border between Calyx and human space, Zara felt a mix of fear and desperate hope. The station buzzed with activity as traders from dozens of species conducted business. The air recyclers worked overtime to manage the mix of atmospheric requirements, creating a humid, heavy environment that made breathing difficult. Zara was loaded onto a hover stretcher and taken to the medical evaluation center. The room smelled of disinfectant and desperation. Rows of beings sat or lay on examination tables while potential buyers examined them like livestock. Some were elderly Calyx whose families no longer wanted to care for them. Others were members of species Zara didn't recognize, all bearing the hollow look of the abandoned. Dr. Sarah Chen was not what Zara expected from a human. The young woman was small compared to the other species in the room, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a simple medical coat over civilian clothes, not the military uniform Zara associated with humans. "Hello," Dr. Chen said softly, approaching Zara's stretcher. Her voice carried none of the clinical coldness Zara had grown used to. "I'm Dr. Chen. I work with the Terran Medical Refugee Program. May I examine you?" Zara nodded, not trusting her voice. She had practiced basic standard, the common trade language, but her accent was thick and she worried about making mistakes. Dr. Chen's examination was gentle and thorough. Her hands were warm against Zara's skin as she checked reflexes and tested sensation. Unlike the Calyx doctors, she explained what she was doing and asked about pain levels. "The spinal damage is severe," Dr. Chen murmured, studying the medical files on her tablet. "But there's still some neural activity below the injury site." "That's actually quite promising." "Promising?" Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Chen looked up from her tablet, meeting Zara's eyes directly. "Yes, there are treatment options that might help. Experimental procedures, rehabilitation techniques. It would take time and a lot of work. But there's hope. Hope. Zara had forgotten what that word meant. She stared at this strange human woman who spoke of possibilities where others saw only waste. "Why?" Zara asked. "Why would you help me? I cannot work. I cannot pay. I am broken." Dr. Chen's expression grew fierce. "You're not broken. You're injured. There's a difference. And as for why..." She paused, organizing her thoughts. "Because everyone deserves a chance at a good life. Because potential isn't always visible to the naked eye. Because sometimes the most beautiful flowers grow in the harshest soil." The poetic nature of the response surprised Zara. She had been told humans were practical to the point of brutality, focused only on efficiency and profit. But this woman spoke like the philosophers of Zara's home world. "I don't understand humans," Zara said honestly. Dr. Chen smiled, and the expression transformed her entire face. "That's okay. I don't always understand humans either. But I know that my people have a saying, 'No one left behind.' It means we don't abandon those who are struggling." A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A group of Helix officials entered, led by a tall figure in elaborate robes. Zara recognized him immediately. High Administrator Kelevhaz, one of the most powerful figures in their government. "Dr. Chen," the administrator said, his translation device rendering his clicks into cold, mechanical standard. "I understand you are considering taking the damaged Calyx female." "I'm considering offering her medical treatment and rehabilitation," Dr. Chen corrected firmly. The administrator's compound eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement. "The same thing, essentially. I feel I should inform you that this individual is a former communications specialist who had access to classified military information." Zara's blood ran cold. She had hoped her previous assignment would remain buried in bureaucratic files. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change. "Is she a criminal?" "No," the administrator admitted, "but her knowledge makes her valuable to certain parties. There have been inquiries about purchasing her contract." "For interrogation," Dr. Chen said. It wasn't a question. "For information extraction, yes. The offers have been quite generous. More than your refugee program could afford, I imagine." Zara watched the exchange with growing dread. She had seen what happened to prisoners who underwent information extraction. The process left most subjects as empty shells, their minds shattered by neural intrusion techniques. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying her tablet. Then she looked up at the administrator with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Administrator, I'm curious about something. What's the current exchange rate between Helix credits and Terran dollars?" The question seemed to puzzle the alien official. He consulted his own device before answering. "Currently 1.7 Helix credits to 1 Terran dollar." "Interesting." Dr. Chen tapped her tablet a few more times. "And what's the highest offer you've received for Zara's contract?" 50,000 credits, the administrator said with obvious pride. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Well, I'm prepared to offer 60,000 Terran dollars for her immediate transfer to Terran custody." The calculation was quick. $60,000 equaled over 100,000 credits, double the highest previous offer. The administrator's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the unexpected bid. "That is quite generous," he said slowly. "But why would the Terran government pay so much for a disabled individual?" "The Terran government isn't paying anything," Dr. Chen replied calmly. "I am. Personal funds." Zara stared at the human woman in shock. She was offering her life savings for someone she had just met? It made no logical sense. The administrator was equally confused. "Your personal wealth? But why? What could you possibly gain from this transaction?" Dr. Chen looked down at Zara, her expression soft but determined. Sometimes the most valuable things can't be measured in credits or dollars. Sometimes you do something because it's right, not because it's profitable. Humans, the administrator muttered, but he was already preparing the transfer documents. As the paperwork was completed, Zara found herself overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Gratitude warred with suspicion, hope with fear. This human woman had just spent a fortune to save her from a fate worse than death. But Zara couldn't understand why. "Dr. Chen?" she said quietly when they were finally alone. "I must ask, what do you expect from me? What service do I owe for this debt?" Dr. Chen pulled a chair next to Zara's stretcher and sat down. "You don't owe me anything. This isn't a transaction. It's a gift. The only thing I ask is that you don't give up on yourself. But the money is just money. I'm a trauma surgeon, and I've been saving up to buy a vacation house somewhere sunny. But I realized I'd rather spend it on something more important." She gestured around the room full of desperate beings. "There are so many people here who just need someone to believe in them." Zara felt tears building in her eyes, a response that would have brought shame among the Keeliks, but seemed to concern Dr. Chen. The human woman reached out carefully and took Zara's hand in both of hers. "Listen to me, Zara. I know you've been told you're worthless, that your life is over because you can't walk. But that's not true. You're brilliant. Your file shows you spoke 6 languages and managed complex communication systems. You're strong. You've survived 6 months of medical hell without breaking. And you're brave. You're here, still fighting, still hoping." "I don't feel brave," Zara whispered. "Brave people never do," Dr. Chen said with a gentle smile. "They just keep going anyway." The transport to Earth took 2 weeks. Dr. Chen had arranged for a private medical cabin where Zara could rest comfortably during the journey. The human woman visited every day, sometimes to check on Zara's medical condition, but often just to talk. Zara learned that Dr. Chen had lost her younger brother in a hovercar accident when he was 19. He had been paralyzed for 3 years before dying from complications, and Dr. Chen had watched their parents slowly give up hope. "I became a doctor because of Marcus," Dr. Chen explained one evening as they watched the stars stream past the viewport. "I wanted to be the person I wished we'd had, someone who saw possibilities instead of limitations." "Your brother was lucky to have you," Zara said. "I wasn't enough," Dr. Chen replied sadly. "I was still in medical school when he died. I couldn't help him the way I wanted to. But maybe I can help you." Zara was beginning to understand that this wasn't really about her at all. Dr. Chen was trying to heal an old wound by saving someone she couldn't save before. It should have made Zara feel used. But instead it made the human woman seem more real, more relatable. "What will happen when we reach Earth?" Zara asked. "First, we'll get you settled in a rehabilitation facility, the best in the system, with doctors who specialize in spinal cord injuries. Then we'll start the long process of figuring out what's possible." "And if nothing is possible? If I never walk again?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. "Then we'll figure out how to make your life meaningful and fulfilling anyway. Mobility isn't the only measure of a life worth living." On their last night aboard the transport, Zara lay awake thinking about the strange turns her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had been a respected communications officer with a promising career. Now she was a refugee completely dependent on the kindness of an alien stranger. But for the first time since her injury, she felt something other than despair. Dr. Chen's unwavering optimism was infectious, and Zara found herself imagining possibilities she had thought were lost forever. Maybe she could learn new skills. Maybe she could find ways to contribute to society again. Maybe she could even be happy. The ship's computer announced their approach to Earth's solar system, and Zara pressed her face to the viewport to catch her first glimpse of humanity's home world. It was smaller than she had expected, a blue and white marble suspended in the infinite black. But it was beautiful, and as they drew closer, she could see the orbital platforms and space elevators that spoke of a thriving technological civilization. Dr. Chen joined her at the viewport, smiling at Zara's expression of wonder. "Welcome to Earth," she said softly. "Welcome home." Home. Zara tested the word in her mind. It had been so long since she'd had one of those. Maybe, just maybe, she could learn to call this strange world home. Maybe she could learn to trust in the impossible kindness of humans. As their ship began its final approach to the landing bay, Zara felt the first stirrings of something she had thought was lost forever. Excitement for the future. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't face it alone. Dr. Chen had given her more than medical care and shelter. She had given her back her belief that tomorrow might be better than today. The landing was smooth, and as they prepared to disembark, Dr. Chen squeezed Zara's hand gently. "Ready for the next chapter?" she asked. Zara squeezed back, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "Yes, I think I am." The Meridian Rehabilitation Center was unlike anything Zara had imagined. Built into a hillside overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the facility felt more like a resort than a medical institution. Large windows flooded the corridors with natural light, and the walls were decorated with artwork created by former patients. The air smelled of salt and growing things instead of antiseptic and despair. Dr. Chen wheeled Zara through the main lobby, pointing out various amenities. "The pool is heated and has specialized equipment for mobility therapy," she explained. "The library has texts in over 40 languages, including Calixian, and the gardens are completely accessible." Zara's new room was spacious and comfortable, with a bed that could be adjusted to any position and a view of the ocean. But what caught her attention was the small device sitting on the bedside table, a communication terminal configured with Calixian interfaces. "I thought you might want to record messages for your family," Dr. Chen said quietly. "When you're ready." The kindness of the gesture overwhelmed Zara. She hadn't spoken to her family since the accident. The shame of her condition had kept her silent, and she had assumed they thought her dead. Now she had the opportunity to reach out, but the prospect terrified her. "What if they don't want to hear from me?" Zara asked. "Then you'll know where you stand, and you can move forward," Dr. Chen replied. "But what if they do want to hear from you? What if they've been hoping and waiting for word?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the center's head of spinal rehabilitation, was a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and the most expressive hands Zara had ever seen. She used them constantly while talking, painting pictures in the air to illustrate her points. "The human nervous system is remarkably adaptable," Dr. Rodriguez explained during their first consultation. "But the Calixian nervous system is even more so. Your people's distributed neural networks mean that even with spinal cord damage, there are often alternate pathways that can be developed." She showed Zara scans of her injury, pointing to areas where nerve bundles had been compressed rather than severed. "See these clusters? In humans, these would be considered dead tissue. But Calixian neural architecture includes redundant pathways. With the right stimulation and training, we might be able to wake some of these up." The treatment plan was ambitious and exhausting. 3 hours of physical therapy every morning, focusing on maintaining muscle mass and flexibility in her paralyzed limbs. Neural stimulation therapy in the afternoons, where electrodes encouraged damaged nerves to fire and hopefully form new connections. Occupational therapy to help her adapt to daily life, and psychological counseling to address the trauma and depression that came with her condition. Zara's first physical therapist was a cheerful human man named David Kim, who had been born without legs. He moved around the therapy room with easy grace using arm crutches, demonstrating exercises with the casual confidence of someone who had never seen his disability as a limitation. The hardest part isn't the physical stuff, he told Zara during their first session. It's learning to see yourself differently. You've spent your whole life thinking of yourself as a person who walks. Now you have to learn to be a person who doesn't walk. And that person is just as valuable and capable as the person you were before. The exercises were difficult and often painful. David worked Zara through range of motion movements, stretching muscles that wanted to tighten and contract. He taught her how to transfer from bed to wheelchair, how to navigate curbs and doorways, how to reach things from different angles. Independence isn't about doing everything yourself, he explained as he showed her how to ask for help effectively. It's about being able to participate fully in your own life, whether that means doing things yourself or directing others to help you do them. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the neural stimulation specialist, was younger than Dr. Chen, but carried herself with quiet authority. She attached electrodes to Zara's legs and back, explaining the process as she worked. "We're essentially trying to remind your nervous system how to communicate," she said. "The pathways are still there, but they've been disrupted. Think of it like a radio that's lost its signal. We're trying to tune it back in." The treatments were strange and uncomfortable. Electrical impulses made Zara's muscles twitch and contract involuntarily. Sometimes she felt tingling sensations in her legs, phantom signals that might represent progress or might just be wishful thinking. "Even if we can't restore full mobility," Dr. Walsh explained, "any improvement in sensation and function will make your life easier. Being able to feel pressure or temperature changes can prevent injuries. Having some muscle control can help with circulation and bone density." But it was the psychological counseling with Dr. Maria Santos that proved most challenging. Dr. Santos was a small woman with an enormous presence who had a talent for asking uncomfortable questions in a gentle voice. "Tell me about your family," she said during their first session. Zara found herself describing her parents' research compound on Helix Prime, where her father studied atmospheric dynamics and her mother worked on terraforming technologies. She spoke about her younger brother Kale, who was studying to become a pilot, and her sister Naya, who was gifted at mechanical engineering. "Do you think they see you as a burden?" Dr. Santos asked. "I don't know," Zara admitted. "Among my people, family units are expected to be self-sufficient and productive. A member who cannot contribute creates complications." "But you can contribute," Dr. Santos pointed out. "Your mind wasn't damaged in the accident. Your knowledge and skills are still intact. What use is a communications specialist who cannot travel or work in the field?" Dr. Santos leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. "Zara, I want you to imagine something. Imagine that tomorrow you received word that your brother had been injured and paralyzed. What would your first thought be?" The answer came immediately. "I would want to help him. I would want him to come home so we could take care of him." "Would you see him as a burden?" "No. He's my brother. I love him." "Then why do you assume your family sees you differently?" The question haunted Zara for days. She found herself staring at the communication terminal, composing and deleting messages to her family. What could she say? How could she explain where she had been and what had happened to her? Dr. Chen visited every evening, sometimes checking on Zara's medical progress, but more often just spending time together. They would sit by the large windows in Zara's room and watch the sunset over the ocean while sharing stories about their respective worlds. "On Helix Prime, we have 3 moons," Zara told her one evening. "When they're all full at the same time, the light is so bright you can read by it. We call it the night of reading, and families stay up together telling stories." "That sounds beautiful," Dr. Chen said. "Earth only has 1 moon, but it's big enough to light up the whole sky when it's full. Some humans believe it affects their emotions and behavior. Do you believe that?" Dr. Chen considered the question seriously. "I believe the universe is full of connections we don't understand yet. Maybe the moon does affect us, or maybe we just like having something romantic to blame our moods on. They talked about everything: science, philosophy, food, art, dreams. Zara learned that Dr. Chen played violin badly but enthusiastically, that she was afraid of spiders, and that she had once climbed a mountain just to see if she could. Dr. Chen learned that Zara could solve complex mathematical equations in her head, that she wrote poetry in her spare time, and that she had always wanted to see snow. Snow? Dr. Chen asked, surprised. In person? Calyx Prime is too warm for frozen precipitation, Zara explained. I've seen it in videos, but never felt it. Dr. Chen smiled mysteriously. We'll have to do something about that. 3 weeks into her stay at the rehabilitation center, Zara experienced her first breakthrough. During a neural stimulation session, Dr. Walsh was adjusting the electrodes when Zara suddenly gasped. What is it? Dr. Walsh asked quickly. I felt that, Zara whispered, staring down at her left leg. You touched my ankle, and I felt it. Dr. Walsh carefully repeated the touch, watching Zara's face intently. What about now? Yes, it's not strong, but it's there, like a whisper of sensation. The medical team was cautiously optimistic. Dr. Rodriguez explained that restored sensation didn't necessarily mean restored mobility, but it was a positive sign that the neural pathways were beginning to function again. We'll continue the current treatment protocol, she said, and we'll add some new exercises to see if we can build on this progress. Zara found herself paying obsessive attention to her legs, monitoring every twinge and phantom sensation. Sometimes she thought she felt movement or pressure, but she couldn't tell if it was real progress or desperate imagination. David Kim noticed her preoccupation during physical therapy. You're so focused on what your legs might be doing that you're forgetting to live your life, he observed. Recovery isn't just about getting better. It's about being present for whatever is happening right now. That evening, Zara finally composed a message to her family. It was short and simple. Mother, Father, Kyle, and Naya. I am alive and safe. I was injured in the attack on Research Station Beta 7 and have been receiving medical treatment. I am learning to use a mobility chair and am staying at a rehabilitation facility on Earth. The humans who are caring for me are kind and skilled. I think about you every day and hope you are well. I love you. Zara. She stared at the message for an hour before finding the courage to send it. The reply came 2 days later. Zara opened it with shaking hands to find video messages from each family member. Her mother was crying as she spoke, her father's usually composed face showing deep emotion. Kale and Naya took turns telling her how much they missed her and how worried they had been. We thought you were dead, her father said. When we heard about the attack and couldn't find your name on any survivor lists, we held a mourning ceremony. But your mother never stopped hoping. Come home, her mother pleaded. We have resources here. We can take care of you. Zara watched the messages 3 times before responding. When she did, she found herself explaining not just her medical condition, but her growing attachment to the humans who had saved her. Dr. Chen spent her own savings to rescue me from a terrible fate, she wrote. The medical team here believes they can help me regain some function. I am not ready to leave yet, but I promise I will come home when I am able. The response to her second message was more complex. Her father expressed confusion about human motivations, wondering what hidden agenda Dr. Chen might have. Her siblings were supportive but worried about the experimental treatments. Her mother simply said she would support whatever decision Zara made. Dr. Santos helped her process the mixed feelings the messages created. It's normal for families to have complicated reactions to major changes, she explained. They're dealing with grief, relief, fear, and confusion all at once. Give them time to adjust. A month into her stay, Dr. Chen surprised Zara with a special outing. The rehabilitation center had a van equipped for wheelchair transport, and Dr. Chen had arranged to take Zara to see something she had never experienced. They drove up into the mountains outside the city, where the air grew thinner and cooler. As they climbed higher, Zara noticed white patches appearing on the distant peaks. "Is that?" she began. "Snow," Dr. Chen confirmed with a grin. When they reached the snow line, Dr. Chen helped Zara transfer to a specially designed all-terrain wheelchair with large knobby tires. They made their way to a clearing where fresh snow sparkled in the afternoon sunlight. "Go ahead," Dr. Chen encouraged. "Touch it." Zara reached out hesitantly and let her fingers sink into the cold, crystalline surface. It was nothing like she had imagined, softer than she expected, but with a structure that held its shape. She picked up a handful and watched it melt against her warm palm. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Wait until you see this," Dr. Chen said. She scooped up a large handful of snow and packed it into a ball, then showed Zara how to do the same. For the next hour, they had a snowball fight. Zara quickly discovered that her seated position gave her excellent accuracy for low throws, while Dr. Chen had to crouch down to target her effectively. They laughed until their cheeks hurt and their hands were numb with cold. As the sun began to set, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, they sat together in comfortable silence. Zara felt something she hadn't experienced since before her accident. Pure, uncomplicated joy. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For showing me that there are still new things to discover. For proving that my life isn't over, just different." Dr. Chen smiled, her breath visible in the cold air. "You're stronger than you know, Zara. You've been through something that would have destroyed most people, and you're still here, still fighting, still growing. That's not just survival, that's triumph." On the drive back down the mountain, Zara found herself thinking about the future for the first time since her accident. Maybe she would never walk again, and maybe that was okay. Maybe there were different ways to be whole, different definitions of a life well lived. When they returned to the rehabilitation center, she had a surprise waiting for her. Dr. Walsh was practically vibrating with excitement as she showed Zara the results of the day's neural scans. "The snow day must have been good for you," she said. "Your neural activity is the highest we've recorded since you arrived. Whatever happened today, it seems to have stimulated some significant healing responses." Zara looked at the colorful brain scans showing increased activity in areas that had been dormant for months. Maybe it was the cold, or the exercise, or the laughter, or maybe it was simply the reminder that life still held magic and wonder, even when everything seemed lost. That night, she wrote another message to her family, this one longer and more detailed. She told them about the snow, about her progress in therapy, about the humans who had become more than just caregivers. For the first time since her accident, she wrote about hope. As she prepared for sleep, Zara realized that Dr. Chen had given her something more valuable than medical treatment or financial support. She had given her back her sense of possibility, her belief that tomorrow might be different from today. Outside her window, the ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon, and somewhere beyond that horizon lay her home world. But for now, this was where she belonged. Healing, growing, learning to be the person she was becoming rather than mourning the person she used to be. The future was uncertain, but it was no longer empty. And that, Zara thought as she drifted off to sleep, was more than enough to build a life on. The morning of Zara's breakthrough arrived without fanfare. It was during a routine physical therapy session with David, 3 months after her arrival at the rehabilitation center. She was working on upper body strength exercises when she felt an unusual tingling in her left leg. "David," she said quietly, not wanting to get her hopes up again. "I think..." Could you check something? David immediately moved to her side, his trained eyes alert for any sign of progress. What are you feeling? Movement. I think I can move my toe. David positioned himself where he could watch Zara's left foot while she concentrated. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, barely perceptible, her big toe twitched. Did you see that? Zara asked breathlessly. I saw it, David confirmed, his professional composure cracking into a huge grin. Do it again. This time, the movement was stronger, and her other toes followed suit. David immediately called for Dr. Rodriguez, who arrived within minutes along with Dr. Walsh and Dr. Chen. The neural pathways are definitely reconnecting, Dr. Rodriguez said after examining Zara's reflexes. This is exactly what we hoped for with the treatment protocol. Dr. Walsh was already scheduling additional tests. We need to map the extent of the restored function and adjust the therapy regimen accordingly. This could be just the beginning. But it was Dr. Chen's reaction that meant the most to Zara. The usually composed doctor had tears in her eyes as she squeezed Zara's hand. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. You never gave up, even when it seemed hopeless. The next few weeks brought rapid progress. Feeling returned to more areas of Zara's legs, and she began to develop limited but growing control over specific muscle groups. Dr. Rodriguez introduced new exercises designed to strengthen the reconnecting pathways, while Dr. Walsh fine-tuned the neural stimulation treatments. It's important to have realistic expectations, Dr. Rodriguez cautioned during one of their sessions. Full mobility may not be possible, but even partial recovery can dramatically improve quality of life. Zara nodded, but privately she was setting her own goals. The ability to transfer independently, to stand for short periods, to perhaps take a few steps with assistance. These seemed like reasonable milestones to work toward. The most surprising development came during a session with Dr. Santos. The psychologist had been helping Zara process her changing relationship with her identity when she made an unexpected observation. You've been writing more lately, Dr. Santos noted, gesturing to the tablet where Zara kept a daily journal. Your entries are longer and more detailed. Your poetry has become more complex and nuanced. Zara paused, considering this. I suppose I have more to write about now. My world has expanded considerably since coming here. I think there's more to it than that, Dr. Santos said thoughtfully. Trauma often changes the way people think and create. Some survivors report increased creativity, deeper empathy, new perspectives on life. It's as if the crisis strips away surface concerns and allows people to access parts of themselves they didn't know existed. That evening, Zara read through her recent journal entries and realized Dr. Santos was right. Her writing had become more introspective and emotionally rich. She was exploring themes she had never considered before her accident: resilience, transformation, the unexpected gifts that sometimes emerged from loss. One entry in particular caught her attention. Dr. Chen asked me today what I wanted to do when I was better, and I realized I don't know what better means anymore. I will never be exactly who I was before the accident, but maybe that's not the goal. Maybe the goal is to become someone new, someone who carries both the pain and the wisdom, both the loss and the unexpected discoveries. She decided to share some of her writing with Dr. Chen, who read it with the same careful attention she gave to medical reports. This is beautiful, Dr. Chen said when she finished. Have you considered that your experience might help other people who are going through similar struggles? What do you mean? I mean that you have insights now that could comfort and guide others facing traumatic injuries. Your perspective as a member of another species adds a unique dimension that could benefit rehabilitation programs throughout the galaxy. The idea intrigued Zara. She had been so focused on her own recovery that she hadn't considered how her experience might serve a larger purpose. That night, she began writing something new. Not a journal entry or a poem, but a guide for newly injured individuals dealing with spinal cord trauma. Her first draft was awkward and technical, full of medical terminology and clinical observations. But with each revision, her voice became clearer and more authentic. She wrote about the initial despair, the slow process of accepting help, the tiny victories that gradually built into larger triumphs. Dr. Santos read an early draft and made a suggestion that changed everything. You focus a lot on the medical aspects of recovery, but what really makes this special is how you write about hope, about learning to see possibilities where others see only limitations. Zara rewrote the piece with that feedback in mind, weaving together practical advice with philosophical reflections on adaptation and growth. When she shared the final version with the Rehabilitation Center's staff, the response was overwhelming. "This should be published," Dr. Rodriguez declared. "Every spinal rehabilitation facility in human space should have copies available for their patients." But it was David's reaction that convinced Zara to move forward with publication. The normally composed therapist was visibly moved as he read her description of learning to transfer from bed to wheelchair. "You captured something I've never been able to explain to new patients," he said. "The way that mastering small movements becomes a pathway to reclaiming your sense of agency. This could help so many people." Dr. Chen offered to help Zara navigate the publishing process, but she had a bigger suggestion. "What if we expanded this into a larger project, a collaboration between human and Calyx medical professionals to share treatment approaches and patient perspectives?" The idea was ambitious. Relations between humans and the Calyx had been strained since the research station attacks, but medical cooperation might provide a foundation for rebuilding trust. "I would need to return to Calyx space eventually," Zara said, "to gather their perspectives and establish professional contacts. Would you be comfortable with that? Going back?" Zara considered the question carefully. The idea of leaving Earth and Dr. Chen filled her with anxiety, but she was no longer the frightened, abandoned invalid who had arrived at the rehabilitation center 6 months ago. "I think I need to go back," she said finally. "Not as a refugee fleeing my problems, but as someone who has learned to solve them." The planning for her return trip took several weeks. Dr. Chen worked with Calyx medical officials to arrange a formal exchange program, while Zara prepared presentations about human rehabilitation techniques. Her family, who had been sending increasingly worried messages about the political situation in Calyx space, were thrilled to learn she would be coming home. 2 days before her scheduled departure, Dr. Chen took Zara on one final outing. They returned to the snow-covered mountain where they had first played together, but this time Zara was able to transfer independently from the van to her wheelchair and navigate the snowy terrain with confidence. "I have something for you," Dr. Chen said, producing a small device from her backpack. "It's a communication relay with quantum entanglement technology. No matter where you go in the galaxy, we'll be able to talk in real time." Zara accepted the gift with shaking hands. "You're giving me a way to never lose you." "You could never lose me anyway," Dr. Chen said softly. "But yes, this way we can stay connected, even when you're pursuing your new mission." They sat together in the snow, watching the sunset paint the mountains in brilliant colors. Zara felt the weight of impending change, but also the excitement of new possibilities. "I have something for you too," she said, handing Dr. Chen a datapad. "It's a recommendation letter to the Calyx Medical Council, proposing you for an honorary position in their neural rehabilitation division. I thought you might want to expand your work to other species." Dr. Chen read the letter with growing amazement. "This is incredible. But it would mean leaving Earth, at least part-time. Sometimes the best way to honor a gift is to share it with others who need it," Zara said. "You saved me, but there are thousands of others in Calyx space and beyond who could benefit from your approach to medicine." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long time, considering the implications. We could establish a research partnership, study how different species respond to various rehabilitation techniques, develop protocols that work across biological systems. We could change how the galaxy thinks about disability and recovery, Zara added. Show that being different doesn't mean being broken. The night before her departure, the Rehabilitation Center staff organized a farewell party. Zara was surprised by how many people attended. Not just medical staff, but other patients she had befriended during her stay, maintenance workers who had greeted her in the hallways, and even some visitors who had heard her story. David presented her with a collection of letters from patients who had been inspired by her writing. Dr. Rodriguez gave her a comprehensive manual of rehabilitation techniques to share with Calyx medical professionals. Dr. Santos contributed a psychological assessment framework adapted for non-human patients. But Dr. Walsh's gift was the most meaningful. She presented Zara with a detailed neural map showing the pathways that had regenerated during her treatment. "This is proof that the impossible isn't always impossible," she said. "When you show this to Calyx doctors, they'll see that their initial prognosis was wrong. You're living evidence that recovery can happen when we refuse to give up." Dr. Chen's gift came last, and it was simple but profound, a small vial of earth snow, specially treated to remain frozen indefinitely. "For when you need to remember that there's always something new to discover," she said. The departure morning was emotional but not tragic. Zara had learned the difference between goodbye and farewell. Goodbye suggested ending, while farewell meant until we meet again. As her transport ship prepared for departure, Dr. Chen walked beside Zara's wheelchair to the boarding ramp. They had said their private farewells the night before, but this public moment felt important too. "Remember your promise," Dr. Chen said. "Which one?" "I made several." "To stay in touch. To take care of yourself. To never stop believing in possibilities." Zara smiled, feeling the weight of the communication device in her bag and the warmth of friendship that would span star systems. "I promise. All of it." The journey to Calyx Prime took 3 weeks, and Zara spent the time preparing for her presentation to the medical council. But she also wrote letters to Dr. Chen, journal entries about her changing perspective on home and belonging, and the first chapters of a book about cross-species medical cooperation. When her ship entered Calyx space, Zara felt a complex mix of emotions. The familiar sight of the double star system where she had been born brought tears to her eyes, but she was no longer the same person who had left this place as a refugee. Her family was waiting at the spaceport, and their reunion was everything she had hoped for. Her parents embraced her wheelchair and all, her siblings peppered her with questions about Earth and human culture, and her mother wept openly at the sight of her daughter's obvious health and happiness. "You look different," her brother Kyle observed as they traveled to the family compound. "Stronger somehow?" "I am stronger," Zara agreed. "In ways I never expected to be." Her presentation to the medical council was scheduled for the following week, but word of her arrival and her story had already spread through the medical community. Dr. Vexhall, the same physician who had condemned her as a hopeless case, requested a private meeting. "I owe you an apology," he said stiffly when they met in his office. "My assessment of your condition was premature." Zara studied his compound eyes, looking for sincerity behind the formal words. "Your assessment was based on the information and techniques available to you at the time. The humans approached my case with different tools and perspectives." "Tell me about their methods," Dr. Vexahall said, and for the next 2 hours, Zara shared everything she had learned about neural stimulation therapy, psychological support, and holistic rehabilitation approaches. When she finished, Dr. Vexhall was quiet for a long time. "We have been too quick to abandon patients we deem untreatable. These human techniques, they could revolutionize our practice." "That's what I'm hoping for," Zara said. Dr. Chen and I have proposed a formal exchange program. Human and calyx medical professionals working together to develop better treatments for spinal cord injuries across species lines. Her presentation to the full medical council was met with skepticism that gradually gave way to fascination as she demonstrated her recovered mobility and shared neural scans showing the regenerated pathways. When she finished with her proposal for the medical exchange program, the council members peppered her with technical questions that she answered with growing confidence. High Administrator Kelev Haas, the same official who had tried to sell her to interrogators on Station Omega-7, was present for the presentation. Afterward, he approached her with what might have been embarrassment. "I misjudged both your value and the nature of human motivations," he said. "Perhaps we have been too hasty in our assumptions about that species." "Dr. Chen didn't save me because she's human," Zara replied. "She saved me because she's a good person who believes everyone deserves a chance at happiness. There are humans who would have abandoned me just as quickly as the Calyx officials did, but there are also Calyx who would have fought for me the way Dr. Chen did." The administrator considered this. "You're suggesting that morality transcends species." "I'm suggesting that the capacity for compassion exists everywhere, but it requires cultivation and courage to act on it." 3 months after her return to Calyx Prime, Zara received confirmation that the medical council had approved the exchange program. Dr. Mao wished Chen would arrive in 2 weeks to begin establishing the first joint human Calyx rehabilitation facility. But the night before Dr. Chen's arrival, Zara had a different kind of visitor. A young Calyx male arrived at her family's compound, supported by mobility aids and accompanied by worried parents. "My name is Televar," he said quietly. "I was injured in a construction accident 6 months ago. The doctor said I would never walk again, but I heard about your story. I was hoping... Could you tell me about this place where you learned to hope again?" Zara looked at this frightened young male, who reminded her so much of herself a year ago, and she felt the deep satisfaction of purpose fulfilled. "Sit down," she said gently. "Let me tell you about a human doctor who believes in possibilities, and a place where snow falls from the sky like tiny miracles." As she began to tell Televar about her journey from despair to hope, about the humans who had seen potential where others saw only problems, Zara realized that her story was just beginning. Dr. Chen had saved her not just from death or interrogation, but from the belief that her life was over. Now she could pass that gift forward, one person at a time. Outside, the 3 moons of Calyx Prime were rising in perfect alignment, casting the night in silvery light bright enough to read by. Somewhere in the quantum-entangled communication device beside her bed, a message from Dr. Chen was waiting. News about her progress in learning Calyxian medical terminology, excitement about the upcoming collaboration, and a simple reminder that the universe was still full of wonders waiting to be discovered. Zara smiled as she continued her conversation with Televar, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove that compassion, determination, and hope could transcend any boundary, whether it was species, space, or the limitations others tried to impose on wounded hearts. The future stretched ahead like an unwritten page, full of possibility and promise. And for the first time since her accident, Zara was eager to see what story would unfold next.